Thank you much for being here. I want to put in a plug, not that they want it, for Chris and Marie. What a great job they do. I sent him the wrong PowerPoint, then had to turn around and send him the right PowerPoint. And let's see. He's got the right one up. But yes, sir, that's what I expected. And I sent him a note and told him, Chris, I sent you the wrong PowerPoint. Put this one up. So he does a great job, he and Marie both, and we appreciate them immensely. Now, we got Vacation Bible School coming up. Please attend. It's not just for the children. It's for you. Some great lessons. I know how hard I've worked on mine already, and I know the other speakers have done the same thing. And then tonight, come back, and Bill Blevins will be speaking. He always does a great job. And then it'll take about 10 minutes to graduate our students. Most of it was done over at the banquet last night. So please come back tonight and support that cause. Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar gets in trouble with his pride. We've already seen some of that with that great image that he demanded that people fall down to and worship once they heard the music. Now, let's look at his Babylon for just a moment. Now, this is according to secular writings. You won't find this in the Word of God. This is a city that had 4 walls, 41 miles long, 300 feet high, 35 feet deep, and 80 feet thick. They said you'd have no problem whatsoever racing 3 chariots on top of that wall. Now you just think about walls like that. Then 250 towers, 100 gates of brass, and a great water source. They had the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Some writers believe it was built during Daniel's administration as chief of the wise men. The Temple of Baal was there, a golden figure of 18 feet tall. Then they had a 40 by 15 foot banquet table of gold, contained no less than 25 tons of gold. Now, if you had that today, you could retire. That's a lot of gold. Now, Nebuchadnezzar, he's going to be prideful about all of that, as we shall see later in the chapter. Now, as we read the first few verses, there are those who believe this should be in chapter 3. Now, I don't believe that, and we'll show you why. See, Nebuchadnezzar here is bragging on the true and living God and say, well, that should be at the end of 3 where he was doing that, because that God, the true and living God, delivered Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego from the fiery furnace. But now, watch the way it's worded. Nebuchadnezzar the king unto all the people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. Notice, I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. I'm convinced he's going to tell what God has done toward him, and so forth. How great are his signs, how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom. His dominion is from generation generation. So here he is exalting the true and living God, and one would almost think, man, he's given up polytheism. No, you're going to find out as we go down through here, he still believes in many gods until we get to the end of chapter 4, and it seems like he's back to believing in the true and the living God. Now, it's amazing what God can do. Here's a man that is a polytheistic believer, and God is using him to reveal this truth or that truth, and God can do that. Just like he can use Nebuchadnezzar to punish his people. Now, it says in verse 4, I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in mine house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts upon my bed and the visions of my head troubled me. Well, he's had a vision. Therefore made I a decree to bring in all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known unto me the interpretation of the dream. What is dumb about that? They couldn't do it in chapter 2. And he threatened to kill all of them. And he said he had no confidence in them. He couldn't even remember the dream in chapter 2. The Bible said it had gone from him. Now he can remember the dream. And he told the wise men in chapter 2, you tell me the dream. See, you want me to tell you something, and I know you. You will tell me a pack of lies. So, you're trying to buy time. I'm not going to give you that time. And so, he said, put them all to death. That's when Daniel stepped in and rescued all of them, including himself, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now notice verse 7, then came in the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers, and I told the dream before them. But they did not make known unto me the interpretation thereof. Now he tells them the dream. Here's the dream I had. Well, he said in chapter 2, if I tell you the dream, you're going to make up a pack of lies. Now, why do you think they're not going to make up a pack of lies here? They just say, we don't know. I'm convinced because there's a lie detector there. You know who the lie detector is? Daniel. He had these men scared that if they said X, he might call Daniel in to see if X is true. And if Daniel says, no, sir, they lied to you, they're afraid they'll be put to death. I'm convinced that's why they made no effort to tell what the dream meant. But at the last, Daniel came in before me, whose name was Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God. See, he still believes in a false god, Bel. And in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. He has not distinguished that the spirit that's revealing the message to Daniel is from the true and living God, as opposed to all other gods. And before him I told the dream saying, O Belteshazzar, master of the magicians, because I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in thee, and no secret troubleth thee, tell me the vision of my dream that I have seen and the interpretation thereof. Thus were the visions of mine head in my bed. I saw, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and the height thereof was great. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto heaven, and the sight thereof to the end of all the earth. So he sees a huge tree. This tree covers the whole earth and reaches up to heaven. You're going to find out that the beast camp under it, the people are under it, the fowl of the air, they're in the branches, and the fruit thereof feeds everyone. So notice what it says. The leaves thereof were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all. The beast of the field had shadow under it, and the fowls of the heaven dwelt in the boughs thereof, and all flesh was fed of it. I saw in the vision of my head upon my bed, and behold, a watcher, and a holy one came down from heaven. Now, keep your eye on the watcher and the Holy One that's coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said, thus, hew down the tree, cut off his branches, shake off his leaves, and scatter his fruit. Let the beast get away from under it, and the fowls from his branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump of his roots in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass in the tender grass of the field. And let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast and the grass of the earth. Now his portion is Nebuchadnezzar. Cut the tree down, but put a band, a couple of them, iron and brass, around that stump, and let the dew of heaven fall upon it to nourish it, to keep it healthy. As we shall see, it's going to be important later. Let his heart be changed from man's, and let a beast's heart be given unto him, and let 7 times pass over him. Now we're going to find out when the interpretation is given that Nebuchadnezzar is prideful. He thinks Babylon is great because of him, instead of God ruling in the affairs of men and giving that kingdom to him. And so he's going to have to be humbled. And he's going to eat grass and whatever he can find on the face of the earth like a wild animal until he comes to his senses. And his senses will be when 7 times has passed over him, when the completeness of his thought pattern has reached the point to where he says, you know, look, I was great and I had my kingdom because of God. Then and only then will God give him back his kingdom. Verse 17. This matter is by the decree of the watchers. Now, who are the watchers? I'm not sure, except to say probably angels who are working to pull the strings providentially here upon the face of the earth. And if they did it during the time of Nebuchadnezzar, you reckon the watchers are pulling strings today? Absolutely. I believe that with all my heart. And the demand of the word of the holy ones, I view that to be the Godhead. So the holy ones, the Godhead, the watchers working for the Godhead, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High, Godhead, ruleth in the kingdom of men, and giveth it to whomsoever he will, and setteth up over it the basest of men. Idi Amin. Anybody remember that name? Oh, he was a king over a kingdom, I believe it was in Africa. That man was so mean. I remember talking to Margaret Blevins years ago about him. Here's a man eating supper, and they bring a man in that did something, not a major thing. He just pulled out his pistol, blowed his brains out right there, and went back to eating. There are people that mean, that ungodly. Look at Castro, and America helped put him in power. And look at how he's treated the Cuban people. You ever pray for the Islamic nations that somehow things can be changed so that if you and I were over there and caught reading our Bible, we wouldn't be jailed or put to death? They need a fair break. Thank God we were born in America. I pray that prayer quite often. I don't know how things were determined, but I'm proud I was born in America. Tears came in my eyes today as I was looking at Facebook, and somewhere overseas, here's this lady bent down. You've probably seen this picture. And she's holding a bottle of water for a little dude about that high, and his legs about that big around, about to starve to death. That's you. That's me, if we hadn't been born in America. Thank God we're Americans. This land flows with milk and honey. Now, who's the government? That's you. That's me. And I'm convinced you're wrong if you don't participate in it. What I mean by that, we got to try to change things. I've argued with members of the church down through the years, if we vote and try to put conservative people in, who knows? We might get Roe versus Wade reversed. And it's happened. Now, there's still a fight to be fought. I think they said about 15 states they looked to outlaw abortion completely. Thank God. See, that's a victory, huge victory, because of you, because of me, because of God. God saying, look, I set up the government, and I set up the government to punish the wicked and to reward the innocent. And you and I have got to see to it works that way. That's your job and mine. And when we don't, I'm convinced God says you're going to get what you deserve, the basest of men. That's what you want. You can have it. Use your power as a citizen to function as God would want you to function. Don't vote in harmony with the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Independent Party, the American Party, but in harmony with biblical principles. That's the way we're to vote. To change this country and do what we can to help any country. That's our job. So there he is. Tree's been cut down. He's out there like a wild animal. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now thou, O Belteshazzar, declare the interpretation thereof, for as much as all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known unto me the interpretation. Why did you call for them? They couldn't do it in Daniel 2. But thou art able, for the Spirit of the holy gods is in thee. Now, he believes that there's something special about Daniel, and there is. The God of heaven is going to use him to reveal the message. Then Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, was astonished for 1 hour, and his thoughts troubled him. The king spake and said, Belteshazzar, let not the dream or the interpretation thereof trouble thee. See, Daniel now knows what the interpretation is because God's revealed it to him. And it's going to bother Daniel to have to tell Nebuchadnezzar the truth. But a man of God's got to speak the truth. Belteshazzar answered and said, My Lord, the dream be to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. He'll kill you, Daniel. You can't tell him he's going to lose his kingdom. He's got to tell him that, because that's what God's revealed to him, if he's going to be the man of God. So Daniel says, My Lord, the dream to them that hate thee, and the interpretation thereof to thine enemies. Then he takes off to tell the interpretation. The tree that thou sawest, which grew and was strong, whose height reached unto the heaven, and the sight thereof to all the earth, whose leaves were fair, and the fruit thereof much, and in it was meat for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and upon whose branches the fowls of the heaven had their habitation. Is thou, O king, that's you, that are grown and become strong, for thy greatness is grown, and reached unto heaven, and thy dominion to the end of the earth. And whereas the king saw a watcher and a holy one coming down from heaven, and saying, Hew the tree down and destroy it. That's a divine decree. No one on earth can stop it. Yet leave the stump of the roots thereof in the earth, even with a band of iron and brass, in the tender grass of the field, and let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let his portion be with the beast of the field, till 7 times pass over him. Take his kingdom away from him. Put him out there like an animal. Let's see how he fares without God. Let him try to find even his own food without God. And let's see how he fares. And he's going to stay out there until 7 times pass over him, or he comes to his senses and realizes that God rules in the affairs of men. So there's Nebuchadnezzar, his kingdom being cut down. That stump will be left. By the way, I've got 2 men giving me an estimate now how much it's going to take to clean out my ditch behind my house. We cut down those trees, and guess what? They grow back. They grow back. Well, this one's going to grow back by the divine will of God. And whereas they command to leave the stump of the tree roots, thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee, after that thou shalt know that the heavens do rule. When you come to your senses, give up your pride, and realize you're the king of Babylon because of the Most High God, then and only then will you get your kingdom back. Wherefore, O king, let my counsel be acceptable unto thee. Now watch. He's going to try to tell him how he can prolong his days. It's not going to happen like that. Let my counsel be acceptable unto thee, and break off thy sins by righteousness. King, give up your sins and live a righteous life. And thine iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. You make sure you don't mistreat those who are less fortunate than you. If it may be a lengthening of thy tranquility. You want to prolong your days before the tree falls? Live better. If you'll live better, you're going to prolong your days. Thy kingdom shall be sure unto thee, after that thou shalt have known that the heavens do rule. You're not getting it back until you figure out that God rules in the affairs of men. All this came upon the king Nebuchadnezzar. Now notice, at the end of 12 months, he walked in the palace in the kingdom of Babylon. 12 months have passed. The king spake and said, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for the house of the kingdom by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? Here he is holding out his lapel, so to speak, saying, I want you to look at this place. Man, this place is great. You know why it's great? Nebuchadnezzar. I built it. I did all of this. And when he had that attitude, you know what God's attitude was? It's time to eat grass. That's God's attitude. While the word was in the king's mouth, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee it is spoken, the kingdom is departed from thee. And they, now, we've got to figure out who the they are. The they, are they the watchers? Or are they the hierarchy of Babylon minus Nebuchadnezzar? I lean more toward the hierarchy of Babylon. If you think it's the watchers, that's fine. They shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling shall be with the beasts of the field. They shall make thee to eat grass as oxen. The hierarchy and the people of Babylon are not going to let him back in, so to speak. He's been kicked out completely. And God and the watchers have seen to that. They're definitely behind it. And 7 times shall pass over thee, until you reach a completion of thought that I rule and I give kingdoms to whoever I want to. You're not getting your kingdom back until thou know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will. So old Nebuchadnezzar, he's out there having to live like wild animals. And I don't know if you've ever noticed or known anyone that has lost something and just about lost their mind. You know, some people lose a loved one, just about lose their mind. They can't deal with it. And we had a student here at one time who started a congregation in Pennsylvania. And he lost his wife. He lost the congregation. They even took his books away from him. And he just about lost his mind. Matter of fact, all those people considered him crazy. Here's a man that's lost everything. So if you were around him, you'd probably think, that's a crazy man. Here in America, if you run upon somebody that we call homeless, his nails, fingernails about yay long, his hair down his back real far, old dingy, dirty clothes, smelly. I don't think you'd want to be around him a whole lot, even though you'd feel sorry for him. Do what?
They didn't have deodorant back then.
Yeah, the deodorant probably wasn't handy at the shop and go. The same hour was a thing fulfilled upon Nebuchadnezzar, and he was driven from men. Now, who drove him? The watchers or the people of Babylon? I think probably the people of Babylon. And did eat grass as oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hairs were grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws. Very unkept. And at the end of the days, I, Nebuchadnezzar, lifted up mine eyes unto heaven, and mine understanding returned unto me. He's been thinking this through, and I blessed the Most High, and I praised and honored him that liveth forever, whose dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. He's humbled himself. And he's now exalting God. And all of the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. And he doeth according to his will in the army of heaven and among the inhabitants of the earth. And none can stay his hand or say unto him, what doest thou? Well, Nebuchadnezzar, could you stay his hand when he said he's going to take his your kingdom away from you? No. He said, nobody can do it. At the same time, my reason returned unto me. He's thinking clearly now. And for the glory of my kingdom, mine honor and brightness returned unto me. And my counselors and my lords sought unto me, and I was established in my kingdom. And excellent majesty was added unto me. When I realized God rules in the affairs of men, God said, Nebuchadnezzar, you know that stump that we kept for you so you could grow back into your kingdom and it be great and even greater than what it was before? You can have it back when you reach the right conclusions. Now, I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all whose works are true, and his ways judgment, and those that walk in pride he's able to abase. He found that out. Those who walk in pride he's able to abase. Well, what changed Nebuchadnezzar? He learned that God is with those who serve him. He learned that God knows the future and rules over all men. He learned that God is true and righteous. And those statements are found in those verses that we read a moment ago. And there's other verses to establish the point. Now, pride's what got Babylon in trouble, and pride's going to bring Babylon down, as we'll see in the next chapter. And Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride. And that's probably a good pride. Nothing wrong with that. I'm proud to be an American. I've got pride in that area. But it's got to be a humble pride. Will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. And next week, Lord willing, we'll see what happened to Belshazzar when he was prideful and arrogant. Now, I got a series of verses that I was going to read on pride, but I'm going to give you a chance to make a comment, ask a question. Ken. Yeah. Yeah. In other words, he's saying, Nebuchadnezzar, I hate to tell you the interpretation, because it's to the benefit of those who hate you, your enemies. You know, and these are they, I think, that drove him out where he wound up. And so any leader, I don't care how good he is, has got his enemies. And Nebuchadnezzar had his, and Daniel stated that he had his, and that the interpretation of the dream favored them. Certainly didn't favor Nebuchadnezzar. That's why it troubled Daniel to even have to tell it. Good comment. Anything else? Okay, look at Proverbs 11:2. When pride cometh, then cometh shame. Boy, Nebuchadnezzar found that out. But with the lowly is wisdom. He found that out. Proverbs 18:12, before destruction, the heart of a man is haughty. That's Nebuchadnezzar. And before honor is humility. That's Nebuchadnezzar. Isn't it amazing what a person can learn by going through some trials? All trials are not bad for us. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. You found that out. In Isaiah 2:12, for the day of the Lord of hosts shall be upon every one that is proud and lofty, and upon every one that is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. Don't you hate to see people running around with their nose up in the air? I'm better than you. You know, that kind of attitude. I mean, it makes you want to smack them a little bit and wake them up. But the Lord's going to smack them and wake them up. In James 4:6, but he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud. He proved that with Nebuchadnezzar. But giveth grace unto the humble. He proved that with Nebuchadnezzar. When he humbled himself, he said, you remember that stump that I put bands on so it could stay healthy and together, and I let the dew of heaven water it? I'm going to let it grow again. It's going to be you. And it's going to be as greater than it was before. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the froward mouth do I hate. Well, over and over. I just picked a few verses here and there out of the Bible on pride. Only by pride cometh contention. You think you're better than I am? Why don't you come up here and prove it? You know, pride causes that kind of thing. Proverbs 16:5, every one that is proud in heart is an abomination to the Lord. You know, homosexuals are an abomination to the Lord. Did you know that? Idol worshipers are an abomination to the Lord. Have you ever thought that if you're too prideful, that's an abomination to the Lord? Now, there's a right kind of pride, like I said. A wife ought to take pride in her house and want to keep it clean. Pride in her children, keep them clean and so forth. And we men ought to be prideful enough to want to make a living for our family. But that's the right kind of pride. So thank you for your attention.